She mocked me and said, "You don't have the balls to leave me." I served divorce papers at her sister's wedding, and everyone went silent like defendants hearing a verdict they never saw coming. I'm Daniel Morrison, 40 years old, and for 13 years I believed my marriage to Rebecca was built on the same foundation as my legal career: systematic preparation and unwavering commitment to justice. We lived in a restored colonial mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut, the kind of property that whispers generational success through hand-carved crown molding and imported marble that I'd carefully restored to historical authenticity. I worked as a senior partner at Morrison and Associates, specializing in high-stakes family law and divorce litigation that protected substantial assets for Connecticut's elite. Rebecca managed exclusive event planning through her boutique firm, coordinating weddings and corporate galas for tech executives and old money families who valued sophistication above all else. To our social circle, we were the successful couple who had mastered both professional excellence and domestic elegance. To me, we were partners building something permanent through shared values and complementary expertise. To Rebecca, as I was about to discover, we were apparently just sophisticated cover for her real ambitions. My legal training teaches you that the most dangerous adversaries are those who exploit legitimate access to manipulate systems from within, using trust as their primary weapon. The red flags in my marriage accumulated like evidence in a complex fraud case, each one small enough to rationalize individually, but devastating when analyzed with prosecutorial precision. February brought Rebecca's sudden fascination with my court schedule, asking detailed questions about trial dates and client depositions with curiosity that seemed supportive rather than strategic. She'd mentioned how impressed she was by my dedication, how she understood the demands of high-stakes litigation, always positioning herself as the supportive spouse who never complained about late nights or weekend preparation. March introduced weekend planning retreats that required overnight stays at luxury resorts, always coinciding with my most demanding case preparation periods, when I'd be working 18-hour days reviewing discovery materials and preparing witness examinations. April saw the introduction of mysterious vendor consultations she'd take in other rooms, speaking in hushed tones about venue requirements and client negotiations that required extensive private discussion at unusual hours. When I offered to review contracts together using my legal expertise to protect her business interests, she'd explain that event planning required confidentiality protocols that made sharing details inappropriate before deals were finalized. May brought the dead bedroom situation that developed like systematic jury tampering, gradual, methodical, and designed to achieve a specific outcome without detection. Rebecca always had legitimate reasons for avoiding intimacy: exhaustion from demanding clients, stress from complex event logistics, hormonal fluctuations from new dietary protocols that killed her desire for physical connection. But she had endless energy for increasingly frequent vendor meetings that stretched past midnight client entertainment events that required her presence at exclusive venues, and planning sessions that somehow never generated measurable business growth despite months of intensive professional development. June introduced Marcus Webb, a luxury venue consultant who existed only in carefully edited professional stories. She'd mention him casually, always in business contexts, describing him as a specialist helping her navigate high-end client relationships and exclusive venue partnerships. Looking back, I realized she was conditioning me to accept his presence in her professional life, making him seem boring and technical rather than exciting and dangerous. July brought client entertainment events that required Rebecca's presence at exclusive locations, where wealthy individuals conducted business through sophisticated social interactions, always coinciding with my federal court appearances when I'd be completely unavailable for verification or participation. The breaking point came at the annual Greenwich Bar Association Charity Gala, a black-tie tradition where Connecticut's legal and social elite gathered to celebrate philanthropic achievement while conducting serious business over champagne and strategic networking. Rebecca had been particularly animated that evening, discussing event trends with judges' wives and corporate executives while I reviewed case notes on my phone, preparing for Tuesday's Connecticut Supreme Court oral arguments in a landmark custody dispute. The conversation at our table revolved around legal strategies, recent precedents, and the complex world of high-stakes family litigation. When the discussion turned to recent high-profile divorce cases involving substantial asset protection, I offered insights about forensic accounting techniques and evidence preservation strategies used to detect systematic financial deception, drawing on my expertise in complex matrimonial litigation that had protected hundreds of millions in family wealth. The table listened with professional interest, several attorneys taking mental notes about investigative approaches they might employ in their own practices, But Rebecca's reaction was swift and devastatingly public. She laughed, a sharp, dismissive sound that cut through the elegant atmosphere like a gavel striking marble in an empty courtroom. "Oh, Daniel, you and your paranoid legal theories," she said loud enough for nearby tables to pause their conversations. "Honestly, darling, sometimes I think you see deception everywhere because your world is just contracts and courtroom drama. The real world operates on trust and genuine relationships, not your suspicious interrogations and evidence-gathering protocols." Her words carried the condescension of someone addressing a prosecutor who didn't understand human nature, delivered with theatrical precision for an audience of legal professionals who now viewed me as either paranoid or professionally incompetent. The humiliation was surgical and calculated, designed to undermine my credibility in front of colleagues whose respect I'd spent decades earning. But what came next would destroy everything between us forever. As I sat in stunned silence, processing the public execution of my professional approach to truth-seeking, Rebecca leaned closer with the confidence of someone who believed she held absolute immunity. "You don't have the balls to leave me anyway, Daniel," she whispered with casual cruelty that cut deeper than any adverse ruling. "Face reality, you're a family law attorney who can't even manage his own marriage. You spend your days protecting other people's assets while ignoring what's happening in your own home. You're too comfortable, too predictable, too weak to ever actually take decisive action when it matters most." The words hit like a series of adverse rulings cascading through every level of appeal. She just dismissed 13 years of marriage, my legal expertise, and my fundamental worth as a partner while surrounded by Connecticut's legal establishment. But in that moment of complete professional and personal humiliation, something fundamental shifted in my prosecutorial mindset. The pain, the shock, the disbelief began crystallizing into something colder and infinitely more strategic. Rebecca had just challenged a divorce attorney who specialized in detecting marital deception to demonstrate decisive legal action, while conducting what I was beginning to suspect was systematic adultery disguised as legitimate business operations. The emotional husband recused himself in that moment. The divorce litigator had just been retained pro bono, and Rebecca had no idea that her comfortable, predictable husband was about to employ the same investigative techniques I used to destroy opposing parties in high-stakes divorce proceedings. The humiliation of that charity gala didn't break me. It activated something infinitely more dangerous than wounded pride. The moment Rebecca's dismissive laughter echoed through the Greenwich Bar Association ballroom, witnessed by Connecticut's legal elite, I stopped being her husband and became her opposing counsel. At 5:23 a.m. the next morning, while Rebecca slept like someone whose operational security remained intact, I transformed my home office into a litigation war room that would have impressed federal prosecutors preparing complex matrimonial fraud cases. My legal training had taught me that effective discovery begins with what's already accessible before requesting additional materials through formal channels. I treated my marriage like a case file: fact pattern, issues, remedies, timing. First priority was evidence preservation using the same forensic protocols I employed for high-net-worth divorce cases where millions hung in the balance. Rebecca and I shared cloud storage for household management, joint credit card accounts with detailed statements, and most importantly, a family calendar system that tracked both our professional schedules with timestamps and location data. I filmed continuous chain-of-custody video documenting time, date, and serial numbers, then exported encrypted forensic images of our shared devices to multiple drives and my firm's evidence vault. The digital evidence was devastating and comprehensive. Her phone's location services had been automatically syncing with our shared family account, creating GPS logs that contradicted every professional alibi she'd constructed over 6 months. Credit card statements revealed systematic patterns of charges at luxury hotels during supposed vendor meetings, expensive dinners for two during claimed solo consultations, and purchases at exclusive boutiques that never appeared in our shared closet. The breakthrough came through our joint business insurance policy, which required detailed activity logs for liability coverage. Rebecca had been systematically documenting her own deception, creating business records that proved intimate relationships while claiming professional services. Her event planning software contained client notes that read more like romantic correspondence. MW prefers intimate settings for detailed planning sessions. Extended evening consultations produce optimal creative results. Residential meetings generate superior client satisfaction metrics. The central figure was Marcus Webb, whose phone number appeared frequently in her deleted call logs under M.W. Venue Logistics, coinciding perfectly with her weekend planning retreats and late vendor meetings. GPS data from our shared vehicle placed her at Marcus's private residence during claimed corporate site visits. Financial analysis revealed inflated expense reports for client entertainment that matched his known whereabouts, systematic billing fraud disguised as legitimate business operations. At 7:45 a.m., I contacted Alina Park, my most trusted partner at Morrison & Associates, whose reputation for dismantling complex marital fraud schemes was legendary. Alina, I need you to represent me in a matrimonial action against Rebecca Morrison. Grounds include adultery, financial misconduct, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. I slid the encrypted drive across her desk. This isn't typical divorce litigation. This is systematic deception that extends into criminal enterprise. Alina reviewed the evidence with clinical detachment, her expression hardening as she processed message threads, GPS correlations, and fraudulent expense reports. She's been exploiting your professional absences and firm resources, Alina observed. This demonstrates calculated deception designed to undermine you personally and professionally. We have grounds for punitive damages and asset forfeiture. Within 48 hours, Alina had initiated comprehensive legal proceedings. She filed for divorce citing grounds that would trigger maximum punitive damages, secured temporary restraining orders on all jointly held assets, and drafted motions for immediate discovery demanding full access to Rebecca's financial records and digital devices. The prenuptial agreement she'd once bragged about beating would prove ironclad. My firm had drafted it with adultery forfeiture clauses that would strip her of spousal support and property claims. Meanwhile, I contacted Patricia Chen, a private investigator specializing in matrimonial cases requiring sophisticated surveillance and forensic evidence gathering. Patricia's investigation revealed Marcus wasn't just a venue consultant, but a luxury lifestyle coordinator with multiple professional violations, 2 quiet settlements involving inappropriate client relationships, and pending litigation regarding fraudulent billing practices. Most importantly, he was married to Dr. Sarah Webb, a corporate psychologist who had been quietly building her own case against Marcus's systematic client manipulation. I requested a professional consultation with Dr. Webb through legitimate channels, positioning it as research for family law case involving business valuation disputes. Her reaction to my preliminary evidence was professionally satisfied rather than surprised. Marcus targets ambitious women with established client bases, manipulates them into believing they need his specialized expertise, then exploits their professional relationships while providing no legitimate business value, she explained, sliding her own evidence folder across the desk. Our alliance formed around shared betrayal and complementary expertise that would prove devastating to their deception. Dr. Webb had clinical authority, institutional knowledge of Marcus's manipulation tactics, and psychological profiles explaining his systematic approach. I had legal resources, comprehensive evidence-gathering capabilities, and litigation expertise that could transform their affair into criminal charges and civil liability. The investigation revealed Rebecca and Marcus had been conducting their affair with sophisticated operational security, using business terminology to coordinate meetings, scheduling consultations during my court appearances, and exploiting my trust in her professional competence. But they'd underestimated the comprehensive investigative capabilities available to someone specializing in high-stakes, divorce litigation and asset protection for Connecticut's wealthiest families. As I prepared for the most important strategic decision of my legal career, the perfect venue presented itself. Rebecca's sister Emma was getting married in 2 weeks at the exclusive Whitmore estate. Rebecca was coordinating every detail as both maid of honor and event planner, leveraging her professional network to create what she called our family's Super Bowl. The venue was perfect for maximum impact litigation tactics, public enough for comprehensive witness exposure, intimate enough that no one could escape, and prestigious enough that her entire professional and social network would witness her complete destruction. I refused to touch the ceremony itself. Emma's vows deserved protection from collateral damage. But the reception Rebecca had designed as her professional showcase would become her legal execution. The comfortable, predictable husband she'd mocked for lacking balls was about to demonstrate that the most dangerous adversaries are quiet legal professionals who appear harmless, while possessing capabilities to completely destroy sophisticated deception through systematic evidence gathering and strategic prosecution. Rebecca had challenged me to take decisive action when it mattered most. She was about to discover that challenging a divorce attorney to demonstrate legal precision while conducting systematic matrimonial fraud was the most expensive mistake she could make. Her dismissive confidence about my lack of courage would cost her everything she'd built through months of careful deception, witnessed by everyone who mattered in her professional and personal life. Alina Park and Dr. Sarah Webb transformed our shared betrayal into precision legal warfare. combining matrimonial litigation expertise with psychological analysis to build an irrefutable case that would destroy Rebecca and Marcus's deception with courtroom accuracy. Our final strategy sessions took place in a Leaner's Corner office, where Connecticut's most complex divorce cases had been won through systematic evidence presentation and strategic timing. The documentation we compiled was devastating. 6 months of GPS data proving systematic adultery, fraudulent expense reports documenting financial misconduct, and psychological profiles explaining Marcus's manipulation tactics with clinical precision that would survive any cross-examination. My litigation preparation employed the same aggressive discovery tactics I used for high-stakes corporate divorces. Eliner had secured court orders for comprehensive financial records, while Dr. Webb's psychological authority provided unassailable credibility for evidence presentation. As a licensed corporate psychologist, her analysis of Marcus's manipulative patterns carried professional weight that no amount of deflection could dispute. From a clinical perspective, Dr. Webb had explained during our preparation, Marcus exploits ambitious women who perceive themselves as invulnerable but crave external validation. Rebecca fits the profile perfectly, and her systematic deception demonstrates learned behavior rather than isolated mistakes. The venue preparation required strategic precision worthy of a Supreme Court argument. Emma's wedding reception at the exclusive Whitmore estate was Rebecca's professional masterpiece, meticulously curated to showcase her event planning prowess before Connecticut's social and professional elite. I coordinated with the estate's event manager, securing discreet access to presentation systems while ensuring perfect timing that would maximize legal impact while absolutely protecting Emma's sacred ceremony from any contamination. The guest list included Rebecca's entire professional network, making it the perfect venue for comprehensive witness testimony to her systematic misconduct. Eliner's legal documentation was surgical in its precision. Divorce papers citing adultery and marital fraud, civil complaints for systematic billing violations, temporary restraining orders on all joint assets, and professional misconduct referrals that would end Rebecca's career before she could process the divorce implications. Each document was timed for deployment with maximum shock value and irreparable professional damage. We prepared comprehensive evidence packages with chain of custody documentation that would satisfy any appellate review. Saturday evening arrived with deceptive elegance that masked the approaching legal devastation. The Whitmore estate gleamed like a courthouse built for celebration rather than justice, its crystal chandeliers and marble floors providing the perfect backdrop for what would become the most comprehensive matrimonial exposure in Greenwich social history. Rebecca moved through the cocktail reception with professional confidence, greeting guests with the authority of someone who'd orchestrated every detail while remaining completely unaware that her systematic deception had been documented with litigation-quality precision. Emma's ceremony proceeded with flawless beauty, protected by my absolute commitment to preserving her sacred moment from any legal contamination. I stood with genuine joy as my sister-in-law exchanged vows, ensuring that truth and justice would never compromise the sanctity of authentic love. But as guests transitioned to the reception ballroom, Rebecca's professional showcase was about to become her legal execution. She positioned herself near the head table, coordinating final details with the confidence of someone whose operational security remained intact. At exactly 8:47 p.m., after the traditional toasts had concluded and reception energy reached peak celebration, I approached the microphone with the measured authority I brought to closing arguments. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention for a moment," I announced, my voice carrying across the ballroom with prosecutorial precision. "Before we continue this beautiful celebration of Emma and David's marriage, I have some important legal documents that require immediate service." The elegant conversation quieted as 200 guests processed the unexpected intersection of matrimonial law and wedding reception. Eliner appeared beside me with professional bearing, carrying leather portfolios that suggested official legal proceedings rather than family drama. "Rebecca Morrison," Eliner announced with clinical authority, "you are hereby served with divorce papers citing adultery, systematic financial fraud, and intentional infliction of emotional distress, along with temporary restraining orders on all marital assets." Rebecca's confident smile collapsed as Eliner approached with documentation that would formalize her destruction. "This is completely inappropriate, Daniel," she attempted, but her voice carried less conviction than her fraudulent expense reports. "Emma's wedding isn't the venue for personal legal matters." Her deflection sounded hollow in the elegant ballroom where truth had just been introduced with legal precision. Eliner's response eliminated any possibility of procedural objection. Mrs. Morrison, service of process is legally valid regardless of venue when systematic fraud has been documented. Your adultery and financial misconduct have been proven with courtroom accuracy. She opened the portfolio to reveal comprehensive evidence that transformed adultery into prosecutable misconduct with civil liability implications. That's when Marcus appeared in the ballroom doorway, responding to Rebecca's panicked text about an emergency situation requiring his immediate presence. His confident stride faltered as he processed the scene. Dr. Webb sitting calmly at a guest table, legal evidence being presented publicly, and Rebecca's panicked expression revealing their operational security had been completely compromised. Marcus Webb, Aliner continued with legal authority. You are being served with civil summons for alienation of affection, intentional interference with marriage, and conspiracy to commit systematic fraud. The second portfolio contained evidence of his manipulation tactics and fraudulent billing practices that would destroy his professional credentials permanently. Dr. Webb stood with clinical authority that validated every piece of psychological. The silence that followed Aliner's legal pronouncement stretched across the Whitmore Estate ballroom like evidence under cross-examination, absolute and damning. 200 guests, Connecticut's social and professional elite, processed the intersection of matrimonial law and wedding celebration with stunned recognition that they were witnessing systematic destruction disguised as legal service. Rebecca remained frozen beside the head table, her designer gown now resembling a defendant's uniform, while Marcus stood in the doorway like a witness who just realized he'd walked into a perjury trap. Emma approached with protective authority despite her wedding dress, her voice carrying justified concern mixed with dawning comprehension. Daniel, what's happening here? This is my wedding day. She looked between Rebecca and the legal documents with growing alarm. Rebecca, tell me this isn't what it looks like. Emma, I'm deeply sorry this had to happen at your celebration, I replied with genuine remorse. But Rebecca's systematic deception required immediate legal intervention. The evidence couldn't wait for a more convenient venue. I gestured toward Aliner's portfolios with prosecutorial precision. Your sister has been conducting systematic adultery and financial fraud that threatened our family's integrity and required public accountability. Rebecca attempted damage control with desperate deflection, her voice rising above the stunned murmur of wedding guests. Daniel, you're destroying Emma's wedding over professional jealousy and misunderstandings. Marcus and I have legitimate business relationships that you're twisting into something inappropriate through paranoid legal theories. But her protests crumbled against the weight of documented proof and professional witness testimony. Aliner stepped forward with clinical authority that eliminated any possibility of reasonable doubt. Mrs. Morrison, the evidence includes GPS data proving systematic deception, fraudulent expense reports documenting billing violations, and recorded communications demonstrating premeditated adultery. This isn't misunderstanding, it's comprehensive matrimonial fraud documented with courtroom accuracy. The estate's presentation screen activated, displaying forensic evidence with the same precision Aliner brought to complex asset protection cases. GPS correlation maps showed Rebecca's location during claimed business meetings, consistently at Marcus's residence rather than client venues. Financial analysis revealed systematic patterns of fraudulent billing that had diverted family resources to finance their affair. The visual evidence was undeniable and mathematically precise. Then came the recorded communications that would destroy any remaining credibility. Rebecca's own voice filled the elegant reception space with devastating clarity. Daniel's too comfortable and predictable to ever take real action. He talks about legal strategy but never follows through when it matters personally. Marcus's intimate laughter followed. Your husband doesn't have the spine to challenge us directly. He's all courtroom theory, no practical courage. The ballroom fell absolutely silent as Rebecca's casual mockery of my professional capabilities played for 200 witnesses, while she'd been conducting systematic deception that exploited our marriage for personal gain. The recorded evidence condemned them both completely, their dismissive confidence preserved in digital testimony that no cross-examination could impeach. Dr. Webb stood with clinical authority that transformed adultery into professional misconduct. Marcus employs predictable psychological tactics, she announced with medical precision. He targets ambitious women who feel undervalued, exploits their professional insecurities, then manipulates them into believing they need his specialized expertise. Mrs. Morrison represents a textbook case of his systematic manipulation methodology. That's when additional legal personnel entered through the ballroom's main doors. Process servers with supplemental documentation and representatives from the Connecticut Event Planning Commission, who'd received Aliner's professional misconduct referrals. Rebecca's career was being dismantled in real time, witnessed by the same professional network she'd exploited for personal gain. Rebecca Morrison, the commission representative, announced with regulatory authority, "Your professional license is suspended pending investigation of systematic billing fraud and ethical violations. Your business operations cease immediately, and all client contracts are void due to documented misconduct." The announcement landed with finality that sounded like a gavel striking marble. Marcus attempted to maintain his characteristic confidence, but Dr. Webb's colleagues from the Connecticut Psychology Board approached with their own documentation. "Marcus Webb, your consulting credentials are revoked immediately," one announced with professional finality. Dr. Webb's evidence demonstrates systematic client exploitation that violates every ethical standard in our profession. Emma, processing the comprehensive scope of her sister's deception, addressed the stunned ballroom with bridal authority that commanded absolute attention. "Everyone, please continue celebrating David and my marriage. Rebecca's choices don't reflect our family's values or diminish the love we're honoring tonight." Her grace under pressure demonstrated the strength that had attracted me to their family originally, while protecting her sacred celebration from contamination by criminal proceedings. Rebecca's final desperate appeal came as she processed the complete scope of her professional and personal destruction. She approached me with trembling hands, her designer gown now mocking her total exposure. "Daniel, please, 13 years of marriage must count for something. I'll accept any consequences, sign any agreements, do anything to prevent complete destruction. Don't let this ruin Emma's wedding or destroy our entire family legacy." But family legacy protection was exactly why the evidence had been presented publicly, rather than discussed privately. "Rebecca, you exploited 13 years of trust to coordinate systematic adultery while mocking my professional capabilities in front of colleagues, whose respect I'd spent decades earning. You calculated my court schedule to facilitate deception while billing fraudulent expenses against our joint accounts. This isn't personal destruction, this is systematic accountability for documented crimes." Marcus made one final attempt at deflection. "Daniel, this is between adults. We can resolve this professionally without destroying everyone's reputation." His appeal sounded increasingly desperate against mounting evidence of systematic misconduct. "Marcus," I replied with measured finality, "we were never colleagues. You were a predator exploiting my wife's vulnerabilities while she was a co-conspirator in systematic fraud. Professional resolution requires professional consequences." Alina gathered her legal portfolios while delivering final procedural instructions with clinical precision. "Mrs. Morrison, you have 72 hours to vacate the marital residence and surrender all joint property. These restraining orders eliminate any claim to spousal support, business assets, or family wealth. Criminal referrals have been filed with appropriate authorities for systematic billing fraud and professional misconduct." As Rebecca and Marcus were escorted from the ballroom by security, their elaborate 6-month deception collapsed under legal scrutiny that had exposed their systematic misconduct with courtroom precision. Both went absolutely silent, their dismissive confidence replaced by the dawning comprehension that the comfortable, predictable husband had demonstrated exactly the kind of decisive legal action that would define their professional and personal consequences for decades. The elegant wedding reception continued around us, Emma's celebration protected while justice was served with surgical precision. Rebecca's mocking challenge about my lack of courage had triggered comprehensive matrimonial warfare that cost her everything she'd built through months of careful manipulation, witnessed by everyone who mattered in Connecticut's legal and social establishment. The silence she'd created would echo through their destroyed lives long after the wedding music resumed. The aftermath unfolded with the systematic precision of a federal prosecution, each consequence cascading into the next like perfectly documented evidence in a landmark matrimonial case. Within 72 hours of Emma's wedding reception, Rebecca and Marcus discovered that public humiliation was merely the opening statement in their complete legal destruction. Monday morning brought immediate professional sanctions, asset freezes, and the systematic dismantling of everything they'd built through years of calculated deception. The comfortable, predictable husband had orchestrated the most comprehensive matrimonial fraud exposure in Connecticut legal history, and every detail had been planned with litigation precision that left no possibility of appeal or recovery. Rebecca's world evaporated with breathtaking legal efficiency. The Connecticut Event Planning Commission permanently revoked her professional license after Alina's evidence proved systematic billing fraud and client exploitation. Her boutique firm collapsed within hours as tech executives and old money families terminated contracts, unwilling to associate their prestigious events with documented professional misconduct. The prenuptial agreement held like constitutional law, protecting my legal practice while comprehensive forensic accounting traced every fraudulent expense back to their systematic deception. She walked away with personal belongings and mounting legal bills that would follow her for decades. Stripped of spousal support and property claims through the adultery forfeiture clauses I'd insisted upon 13 years earlier. Marcus faced immediate professional annihilation across multiple regulatory bodies. The Connecticut Psychology Board permanently revoked his consulting credentials after Dr. Sarah Webb's testimony proved systematic client manipulation and professional exploitation. His liability insurance was canceled, corporate partnerships dissolved, and the state licensing board initiated criminal referrals for fraudulent billing practices. The charismatic consultant who'd promised specialized expertise was now banned from professional practice across Connecticut, his reputation destroyed by documented evidence that no amount of charm could overcome. But the most satisfying destruction came from watching their entire support system collapse like a compromised legal argument under appellate scrutiny. Rebecca's colleagues in event planning quickly cooperated with regulatory investigations when faced with potential complicity charges. Marcus's professional network abandoned him overnight, their carefully curated practices unwilling to be associated with documented client exploitation. Even their families distanced themselves from the public scandal that now defined their names in professional circles, creating the complete social exile that follows comprehensive public exposure. Emma required careful attention to process the devastating revelation about her sister's systematic misconduct without allowing it to contaminate her marriage's foundation. I explained with patient honesty how evidence can reveal character when words fail, and how integrity matters more than family loyalty when criminal behavior threatens innocent people. Dr. Martinez, who specialized in family crisis intervention, helped Emma understand that protecting her marriage from Rebecca's destructive influence was an act of love rather than betrayal. Her resilience proved stronger than any family manipulation, and within months she was thriving in her new marriage, protected by honest communication and boundaries that prevented future exploitation. 6 months later, my life had fundamentally transformed in ways that exceeded even my strategic planning. Morrison and Associates expanded dramatically, securing exclusive contracts with Connecticut's wealthiest families, impressed by my methodical approach to detecting sophisticated matrimonial deception. The personal scandal, rather than damaging my professional reputation, had elevated it exponentially. I developed the Matrimonial Integrity Protocol, a comprehensive investigation system that combines GPS analysis, financial forensics, and psychological profiling into tamper-evident case files that hold up under the most aggressive cross-examination. Within a quarter, we had 3 family court judges and Connecticut's largest family law firms requesting training on systematic deception detection. Dr. Sarah Webb and I had developed a relationship built on mutual respect and shared commitment to protecting families from systematic exploitation. Our professional collaboration during the investigation had revealed intellectual compatibility and moral alignment that transcended typical working relationships. She was brilliant, ethical, and possessed unwavering dedication to psychological truth that resonated deeply with my legal values. There was no orchestral swell to our romance, only the steady accumulation of kept promises and shared principles. 10 months after Rebecca's professional destruction, Sarah and I were married in a quiet ceremony at my parents' home, building something genuine from the ashes of destroyed deception, and turning personal betrayal into meaningful partnership focused on protecting others from similar exploitation. The moment of perfect closure came on a spring afternoon when Sarah and I were having lunch at the Greenwich Country Club, celebrating successful completion of a major case that had protected a family trust worth $40 million from systematic matrimonial fraud. I sat comfortably in my tailored navy suit, natural daylight streaming through expansive windows, reviewing case files while enjoying the satisfaction that comes from protecting family integrity through systematic prosecution of sophisticated deception schemes. Across the dining room, I spotted Rebecca working as a low-level administrative assistant, her once commanding presence now replaced by the careful movements of someone rebuilding from professional exile. When she noticed us, her eyes filled with desperate recognition, and she started to approach seeking forgiveness for her systematic misconduct. I simply met her gaze with legal indifference, then returned to my case files, dismissing her as completely as she had once dismissed my professional capabilities while conducting fraudulent billing operations. Some conversations aren't worth having when regulatory boards have already provided definitive answers about accountability and consequences. There is a particular quiet that follows comprehensive proof, a stillness so complete that even apologies know better than to disturb it. Later that evening, Rebecca sent a text from an unfamiliar number. "Daniel, I made terrible mistakes. I understand now that you were protecting family integrity while I was exploiting it for personal gain. Can we discuss forgiveness? I filed the text with other case documentation without responding. Systematic matrimonial fraud spanning months isn't a mistake, and professional misconduct isn't a marital problem that conversation can resolve. Justice had been served with legal precision, and that was sufficient. As Sarah and I walked home through Greenwich's quiet streets, I reflected on how completely my life had transformed since that charity gala where Rebecca first mocked my lack of courage while dismissing my legal approach to truth-seeking. I'd lost a wife built on systematic deception, but gained partnership built on shared professional values and ethical integrity. I'd learned that the most dangerous adversaries are often the quiet legal professionals who appear harmless, while possessing capabilities to completely destroy sophisticated misconduct through systematic investigation and regulatory accountability. Rebecca had coordinated systematic matrimonial fraud while mocking my professional precision, exploiting 13 years of trust to facilitate billing violations disguised as legitimate event planning. Professional misconduct boards had answered her dismissive confidence with regulatory precision that protected not just my practice, but established precedents protecting other families from similar exploitation.